Hi, Setu.
Hey, hi Puchi, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing good, man. How are you?
Doing well, doing well. And first of all, thanks for coming on to the webinar. And we have a very good topic for discussion today, which is basically the role of API security and attack surface management in the continuous threat exposure management. So, with this, I just want to go ahead and let you go ahead and introduce yourself for a couple of minutes, and then I'll take it from there.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for the opportunity in the first place. I'm really excited about it. This is a topic that's near and dear to my heart. A bit of background about myself. I'm an engineer by trade, originally from Hyderabad, India, but I've been in the Bay Area for the last 11 plus years.
Yeah.
Worked at several startups. The startup person at heart, App Dynamics is probably the most notable company a lot of people might realize. I've been part of multiple startups, some successful, pretty good success, some even could not get to the next stage. So I've seen both the success and failures up very close. But
Yeah.
last 5 years, I've been security, spending in the API security space.
Yeah.
And when I actually first started diving into the API security area, it surprised me that to actually see that the overall API security market, or in general the security use cases and the tooling around it, is lagging by at least 5 years, if not more. I mean, we all know APIs have been used for almost 15 plus years. Actually, like I mean, I in the beginning of my career, I implemented APIs 15 years ago.
Yeah.
It's actually mind-boggling that we still haven't solved some of the basic problems in that, and that's what encouraged me to take a dive and jump into it. But apart from API security, I've spent 5 plus years at App Dynamics. So like almost last 10 years, I've been in the space of enterprise applications, enterprise APIs, solving performance problems, debugging problems, distributed tracing. So that's my forte. That's my area of expertise.
That's quite an. I mean, it's always quite a journey, right? Starting from an engineer and then coming to an startup founding kind of a role, and you have most of your experience in startups, and you have seen both sides of the startups, successful startups, and also the unsuccessful ones. That's is it's a very good experience to have under the belt. With that saying, right, I'll go ahead and give a couple of things about myself. So myself, I'm Setu, and I come from an application security background, been penetration testing since my school days, and later moved to US, did my masters, and was working as a cloud security penetration tester at a couple of organizations. In my free time, I just try to go out and share the knowledge that I have at a couple of conferences like DEF CON, Black Hat, B-Sides, C-Sides, etc. uh, it's a quick similarity because you have mentioned that just 15 years ago you have built your first application using APIs, and I started my career as a developer at Cognizant, and it's exactly as of next month it will be 10 years since I wrote my first API at an corporate organization. So since then and till date, I mean APIs have seen a lot of tremendous roller coaster kind of changes, and for the greater good reasons. And it's pretty good with that. And I just want to go ahead and quickly touch base on a very high level in terms of you and me. We both have one similarity when you have mentioned that similarity is Hyderabad. So even I'm from Hyderabad. So hopefully next time when we both are in Hyderabad, we both will have a very good dum biryani next time. Then
Well, we have a lot more similarities than just Hyderabad. Like the biryani is another one, and like the tech founders, and there are several similarities. But yeah, definitely will looking forward to catch up and maybe have biryani together.
sure, definitely. So I mean, Buchi, I just want to go ahead and start with a simple question, which is basically the foundation of our webinar and knowledge sharing session today, which is what do you think about CTEM, which is continuous threat exposure management, and how do you think that it is different from traditional cybersecurity practices that are there right now?
Yeah. I think the word continuous is really important there, because I mean, in general, threat exposure management is not new. Probably the teams and different people have been doing stuff for a very long time. But the previous approaches and previous methodologies were more of episodic, like some of them even once in a year, maybe, and they were not continuous and more like a snapshot kind of approaches, right? So if you take pen testing, like I mean, even today there are a lot of companies who do pen testing only once a year, but we have come a long way. Like you said, APIs took a roller coaster and come a long way. Overall, digitization wave has sped up the pace at which we are innovating a lot. I think for the great good reasons, and we are seeing the impact of it everywhere. Like if you see the kind of pace at which Gen AI has evolved, but all of this under the hoods, it goes back to the digitization and the software, the pace at which we are innovating, which is great. But did we improve our tooling with respect to exposure management, with respect to protecting our assets at the same pace, or at least half of it? I mean, that's the part originally I was very intrigued and motivated about solving. So the continuous is a very important aspect here.
Yes.
DevOps has evolved to adopt continuous deployment, continuous integration. But where is the
Yeah.
continuous aspects in the security? That's why the continuous, I highlight a lot on that. But
Yeah.
typically in today's world, because we are innovating and releasing the software much faster, we got to take things into hands, and you got to be proactive. You got to stay on top of it continuously. You got to automate it, because otherwise there is no freaking way we can actually protect the number of assets that we have. It's not a handful anymore. So be proactive, completely codify and automate it. Think of the scale and think of how are you going to handle it with only a handful of security teams, even though your assets probably have grown exponentially over the last few years.
I mean, I totally agree because the key is the continuous part over here. Because everything in innovation in terms of application development, deployment, integration, all these things are heavily continuous kind of a based. And I feel that security is a bit less compared to the other side of things which are around DevOps. So I totally agree with that. And me personally, right, being a co-founder of an external threat exposure management platform, I feel like it's very important to make sure the defenders, the blue team members, do manage their threat exposures on a continuous basis. So compared to that traditional way of going ahead and assessing an application or assessing an environment on a scheduled basis, versus making sure you assess the environment application on your other things on a continuous basis, that's a huge differentiation, and that's where majorly we have seen the difference between the traditional and cybersecurity practices, as you have mentioned. And the other couple of things here I have seen, for example, if we go ahead and just open up an um, cloud server, for example, either it is an EC2 server or else an Azure instance or anything like that. Within, and we have, if we have exposed few ports to the internet just because we have to SSH in, it's not a great practice. Within minutes, we are seeing bots going ahead and probing the ports and performing SSH brute forcing and all this.
Tell me about it. I've faced it. I've been part of it.
Yeah, yeah,
We actually had that happen to us once in the past, and within no time we had
yeah.
Bitcoin mining happening on our servers.
Yeah. So if hackers are going ahead and doing continuous hacking, we defenders should also make sure we do something called as a continuous defending, and that's what I believe the continuous threat exposure management is bringing to the table, which is like a continuous visibility of what are your assets and what are your risks and all these type of things. And the other thing which which I've also realized is uh, instead of going ahead and finding a vulnerability on a, for example, today I have released an application, and this application is scanned today using a scanner, and we have 10 vulnerabilities today, and the next scan is scheduled for the next month.
Yeah.
And if an application developer goes ahead and releases a change tomorrow or day after tomorrow, the scanners won't pick it up until the next 28 days.
Yep.
And it's like there is no way that we can do anything kind of a proactive defense to go ahead and protect our applications. And with the help of this kind of real-time visibility and real-time assessment, I believe that we get a bit of proactive threat mitigation as well. And once we have the proactive threat mitigation, automatically we can come up with automated remediations, automated Slack ops or chat ops kind of things. We communicate with the other teams. Those type of automations can come in, and once all this automation comes in, right, it becomes very easy for scaling up, and also it's very flexible. So that's what I feel that CTEM, the continuous exposure management, is helping all these big organizations to change and pivot from a traditional way of security practices to a more continuous way, you have mentioned.
Yep. I mean, I'll give a simple analogy. Calendar. Like most of us must be using calendars to maintain
Yeah.
our day and schedule, right? Like, if you don't have, notifications, you have to go and continuously poll, and there's a very good chance that you might actually miss your next meeting, or at least might not go very well planned. It's a very simple
Yeah.
analogy, but I think we have adopted it across the board. It not just in the security. Like even our phone apps, every one of those apps have notification so that we
Yeah.
proactively get notified about anything thing of importance. So security
Yeah.
is not no exception.
Yeah.
And as you pointed, the continuous, you don't have to do it just for the sake of it, but for the benefits that it brings. For like, I mean, today we are all talking about like doing more with the less, especially more true in the security landscape because there is severe security skill shortage and we want more and more people. I mean, I personally encourage, I'm recently I've been encouraging a lot of engineers to actually move to the security side, the security engineering, because first
Yeah.
of all, there is like lots of interesting problems to be solved. But when you have to do more with less with the security shortage,
Yeah.
proactive is the only way to adopt actually. So in my
Yeah.
opinion, it's not an optionality, continuous. You have to
Yeah.
embrace it. It's time.
100%. 100%. I mean, I also have another question for you, by the way, which is like, I know the importance of static application security testing. I know the importance of DAST, dynamic application security testing, running some scanners and going ahead and scanning a web application, and going ahead and scanning an infrastructure as a code and finding the misconfigurations on an IAC level, and the importance of having a web application firewall. So I want to understand, can you please help me understand what is the importance of API security, especially in the modern threat landscape or in the modern cloud native stack sets?
Yeah, let me start with the stat that I think if you have to take a wild guess, like how much percentage of internet traffic do you think is API traffic today?
Okay, that's good. That's a good question. You put me on spot on. I believe, of course, most of the applications are as of today they are
Just
running.
take a swing. Just take a wild guess, right?
It's maybe like 50%.
Yeah. So recently there was a study done by Akamai, the CDN, popular CDN, and they said it's 83%. And
Oh,
yeah. So I mean, whether it is 83 or 75, like the number may not matter, but the staggering thing there is actually the percentage of traffic that is over APIs is humongous. And what I come across, a lot of people still are not understanding the risk from APIs, which is why, like as part of Levo, a big part of it is actually educating the market and educating people, making them realize about the risks that they are sitting on, and why APIs are such a big risk, and what is the importance of it. Very simple. Compared to previous generation applications, the server side rendered HTML pages,
yeah,
APIs have pushed, like they opened up and they take a lot more data in from the client side. The clients have become smarter, and a big part of your web app is actually the single page application is sitting as part of the mobile, as part of the web app, or even mobile app is actually very smart. The amount of data that is getting transferred between the client and the server and the kind of data has changed a lot. That directly impacts the threat attack surface. Like, I mean, even if you actually just open Twitter now and open the web debugger, you might actually see at least a couple of dozens of API calls, if not more, just for
yeah,
loading the homepage. I
yeah,
mean,
yeah.
imagine, if
It's
you are
like
spending 5 minutes on Twitter, how many API calls might be happening?
that.
S-
It's a lot.
The and that all these API calls, they are different beast than the previous generation server side rendered HTML pages, and they pose much higher risk, which is why this API security is important. And the simplest thing is actually you take a simple post API that might have a JSON body that we are posting. It might have 10 keys, 15 keys in it.
Yeah,
Now it's like a Pandora box for a hacker. Like there are like numerous things that they could potentially try doing in all those fields. Like, compared to a previous generation, a form, one form that you have to submit with less fields. Here you are actually talking about couple of dozens of API endpoints, each with several keys. Now you can think
yeah,
about how crazy hackers can go and try several things. On top of it, like in the microservices world, getting authentication, authorization, all of this right is actually very big challenge. Because of all of this, basically all of us are sitting on a very high risk because of the massive adoption of APIs, and we got to take that into we got to take start handling that risk. We got to start caring about those APIs.
yeah.
So in my opinion, it's super super important. In fact, the line between the application security and API security is getting blurred. Very soon they will be
Yeah.
one another same, because we have been phasing out all the previous generation web apps. Like, today, web app and API are almost synonymous already, like because of the
Interesting.
single pages and all.
Yeah, and I can't even imagine a web app without an API because
Exactly.
because I have not ever pen tested an application which is not having an API, and it's part of the package right now. There is no way that you cannot have APIs at part of as part of the web apps. Maybe there may be some scenarios, but I'm not even aware. I'm not able to recall even a single scenario where there is a web application without APIs, unless there is a simple static marketing site. So it's pretty interesting, and I also feel like there are. When I talk about, I always think like a penetration tester as a hacker, right? For me, APIs are gold mines, basically. That's what I call them as, because it's much more. Because initially, when I was doing a lot of pen testing, it's going ahead and these days scanning the ports, finding vulnerabilities in the ports, and then getting um some those were CVEs on them, and then making sure there are some exploits out there, exploiting those CVEs and getting a shell on a server, and then routing that server, and then doing the privilege escalation. Those things have become too tough. And the easy part these days, because easy parts these days are like going ahead and finding those exposed APIs, identifying the APIs which are not having an authentication, identifying the APIs which are having hidden API services, even like cloud service providers, AWS,
Yep.
Azure, Google Cloud,
Yep.
they all have like undocumented APIs, and these undocumented APIs are gold mine for a lot of security professionals, some security penetration testers, and also for the hackers as well. And I also feel that if I go ahead and create a simple Kubernetes cluster, by default in some cloud providers, that Kubernetes cluster comes with an exposed Kubernetes kube API, kube admin API exposed to the internet.
Yep.
So now just imagine we have we know the IP space of these public IP providers, and then just like how this SSH brute forcing is kind of happening, in the same way we also get bots going ahead and hitting our Kubernetes unauthenticated, exposed to the internet kind of services. And once that happens, it's within seconds they can go ahead and spin a lot of pods and then do a lot of Bitcoin mining, and they can. Forget about Bitcoin mining. If that is an production Kubernetes server, and if it is having sensitive data, it's a whole different ball game. And these days it's becoming a lot prominent, identifying these kind of exposed external facing APIs. And it's also getting very complex to make sure we know what are the APIs that are present in my organization. So doing all these things are kind of a huge problem, is what making API security a bit difficult. And at the same time, that is the exact reason why I feel like API security is basic 101 for application security right now.
It has become one. I mean, first of all, like I can see a kid in the candy store while you are talking about these things. I can only imagine
Yeah,
how crazily excited you would be while you are actually trying to hack those, and that's why this is very scary, in fact. And see, There are several studies that are done that are clearly proving the API attacks are on the rise. In
Yes,
some
yes,
studies
yeah,
have published with the exact numbers.
yeah,
See, in hackers' mind, when they are trying to find the low-hanging fruits, and like you said, one of the reasons why the getting the remote shell and some of those, like we have been addressing some of the server vulnerabilities, all those things probably from several years, so that they
yeah,
probably the tooling and all got matured there, and now
yeah,
it's time for this tooling to get matured. Otherwise, wherever the tooling is
right,
weaker, hackers are going to go to that first because
yeah,
that's
yeah.
where they will get the highest reward.
Yes, yes, yes. And I mean, can you like because you are and I mean you have been doing API security for more than a decade right now, right? And Levo is an amazing solution for API security, doing an amazing because I have been using Levo for risk profiler. So it's doing an amazing job for cataloging all these APIs and finding the actual vulnerabilities because I have SAST and all these things integrated into risk profiler's pipeline. Whenever a developer goes and pushes the code and the builds happen, the SAST will go ahead and give all the findings. But the quality of because those are like hundreds and thousands for a startup, and not even for a startup, even for an enterprise organization, it's a pain to go through all these things. But I have seen current API security tools like Levo, the type of cataloging it's doing using the actual traffic, and then the type of payloads and vulnerabilities, actual vulnerabilities that I'm getting. It's a lot of good, amazing value for me. So, can you tell me, like, being an API security expert, what do you think and robust API security strategy in today's digital landscape would look like?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, thanks for the kind words about Levo, and I'm glad that you're seeing the value in the product. And nothing makes us happy than somebody actually really seeing the value of the product, right? That's what we are here for. So the API security, I think you touched briefly in your previous when you were saying you like shadow APIs or hidden APIs, people
Yeah,
undocumented APIs. I think that is actually the first thing. Like, I mean, there's a saying everybody knows. You can't protect what you don't know.
yeah,
So in a lot of products, security products, it starts with visibility, and API security is no exception. But it is a big challenge. Basically, it starts with: do you know how many APIs you have? Do you know how do they look like? What kind of data they are exchanging? What kind of authentication they are using? What kind of permissions they are enforcing? I mean, I
yeah,
can keep going on, and there's a lot of questions, no answers. It's like I mean, it's you would be blown away. We ask some prospects and customers like, hey, how many APIs you might have, and they know that, like, they don't know the exact count. Even if they have to take a wild guess, it's off by huge margin. So there are way more
yeah,
APIs than them. So we start with discovery. In the discovery or cataloging every API is a big challenge because APIs are implemented in several ways. They are hand rolled. There are, not many companies follow documentation or spec first approach. So basically, there is nobody listing all these APIs anywhere, anyways, and it's all in the code. And developers are obviously busy innovating, to push the business to the next level. So because of which, this is a very hard problem, and
yeah,
we have some tooling to actually solve it easily. So you start with the discovery as part of your API security strategy. Try to have answers for all of your questions so that you stay on top of your API sprawl first. You know them first,
yeah,
and
yeah,
then if you it's better if you have very deep documentation about each and every API. On top of it, you do sensitive data discovery, you do risk assessment, try to understand which APIs possess the highest risk so that you
yeah,
can prioritize them better. Like, which
yeah,
ones are internet facing, which ones are having weaker authentications, which ones are dealing with sensitive data, right? All these things will help you prioritize. And the last and very most important one, which we actually pioneered in the industry, is basically continuous security testing. Goes back to the continuous that we discussed earlier. same
yeah,
same concept here. Test them continuously, not once in a year, and you got to test every API. Like, it's I don't think we have the luxury of picking and choosing 5 out of 100 APIs to test today. In my opinion, that would be a
right,
huge mistake because, like, hackers would directly go to the rest of them which were never tested, and they would find low hanging fruits there.
yeah. And
So
also, there is no,
discovery,
there is also
just to
no,
summarize:
yeah, go ahead, go ahead.
discovery, documentation, and risk scoring, and sensitive data classification, and then continuous security testing. I mean, there are
Yeah,
several things, like, you can also do kind of wafts, or like, taking the wafts to the next level. You can also detect if somebody is trying to attack you and all these things. But
Mhm.
we are a big proponent of proactive. So we actually suggest all these things because all these are proactive, and you have full destiny in your control, and you can actually stay on top of all this before your apps get into production with these approaches.
Yes, yes, totally agree. I mean, I have a question from Divyanshu. So Divyanshu is listening to us from LinkedIn. So from the LinkedIn stream, we have a question from Divyanshu, and his question is, what are some automated ways to validate whether the exposed IPs or domains are exploitable automatically when doing attack surface management to reduce the false positives? I mean, he's spot on, by the way, because one of the major problems with attack surface, or I mean, external attack surface management platforms, the stupid false positives. So the reason why they are false positives is the nature of how the external attack surface management platforms, I mean, those things work basically. It's because based on passive stuff, because based on all this IPs landscape, we can't go ahead and actively exploit or send some malicious payloads to an IP address to test whether it is actually exploitable or not. That's what the traditional EASMs are doing, and the cloud native EASMs do a bit differently. What they do a bit differently is they go ahead, cloud native or modern EASM solutions, external attack surface management solutions. What they do a bit differently is they go ahead and they let the customers choose whether they want to go ahead and scan these assets that were identified based on pure open source intelligence, pure passive recon, whether they want to go ahead and actively scan them or not. So there are some platforms, even risk profiler, we have the ability to go ahead and verify a domain kind of a thing. You click on verify a domain, and once you verify that, right, you have 6,000 plus security rules going ahead and scanning that individual IP address on a rate limited base. And then you go ahead and identify what are the exposures in that IP addresses, which ones are exploitable, and then the good EASM solutions show that in a nice graph way, telling that this is the entry point of an attacker. He comes to the VPC, and from the VPC he goes to the subnet, and then this is the elastic IP address, and that elastic IP address is what we have sent. This is the request payload, and this is the response payload. And because of the request and response, because of the biggest one type of response we get, it is exploitable. So that's how the modern EASM solutions work. They do a bit of kind of DAST kind of a thing, not intensive test but basic test. At the also same time, they go ahead and feed the stuff into traditional application security solutions that do a lot of very good job at scanning the endpoints for much more in-depth vulnerability scanning kind of a thing. If you have
Yeah, I
any
mean,
sort of
just to add to that, exploitability, like you underscored, basically, if I have to say one word, exploitability, and to answer to Divyanshu's question straight on, ask your tool whether they are giving the exploitability or
code of
exploitable
not,
code or not. It's like
yeah,
this is one huge differentiation we do at Levo also. Like
yeah,
every vulnerability that we report is already
yeah,
exploited, and we give the code to again for you to go ahead and reproduce it. That's why developers love our tool, because they don't have to again go back to security people or try to
yeah,
understand whether it is happening or not. So
you're right,
exploitability is the key. And
yeah,
I will add to that, there is a lot more scope to improve in this area. Like you said, the SAST and SEO tools are spitting hundreds and maybe thousands of alerts. Actually, the highest that I heard, like, I mean, I'm little even I don't even know if I should say the number, like close to a million vulnerabilities in a very
yeah,
large
yeah,
enterprise that I've spoken to. It's like,
yes,
seriously, I would just file bankruptcy on it, because there's no freaking way I can do anything about a million. And so, but the thing that we could do, again, exploitability, but you can also take it to the next level, reachability. You can add reachability in these tools if they are really smart enough.
yeah,
That's I really love the attack path analysis feature in your product, Setu.
yeah,
And we like I also see strong synergies for our products to integrate and actually make it even better, take it to the next level. But
yeah,
exploitability and reachability are the key components of addressing
yeah,
to what Divyanshu is asking. And I think
yeah.
we should definitely push every tool to actually improve in that area today. There's no time
Yes.
for false positives, man. Let's be honest.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, exactly. I mean, it's that's a value right at the end of the day, because when I was consulting at AWS in my previous job, I was consulting to top banks, and it's very hard to do the triaging on SAST findings at scale. It's very hard to do the triaging. And saving the time is by going ahead and using a proper API security solution with the exploitability score, and then we have something called as probability score. What is the probability that this can be exploited? So that kind of probability score, exploitability score, these type of things will help the customers not just fix those vulnerabilities, but based on the prioritization kind of thing, they can prioritize which ones are important and which ones are like first they have to address. So that's very thing. And then now we have a follow-up question. I mean, it looks like we're getting back-to-back questions from our streams. So we have a question from Anjali, and I think this is your favorite question, by the way, Puchi. So the question is, what are some ways to manage API inventory for automated API testing? So please go ahead.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, there is like it's a they're pretty much asking for about our entire product. Like there are two parts in it. Okay, just the API inventory part, and then for automated API testing part. The first part, API inventory part, there are several ways in which it could be done. You would see vendors, some vendors saying that, hey, just give us access to your code and we'll give you the inventory. And typically, the way it's being done there is in the form of annotations, and that works only for certain frameworks. For example, if you go to Spring, like there are some annotations that I can add and implement a REST API. And by scanning that code, I can look for those annotations. And based on that, I can say, hey, you have this get API endpoint, post API endpoint. Um, it's every approach has pros and cons. And that approach, the advantage is you get immediate results. Just give access to the code, you'll get immediate results. But the big disadvantage is basically it can never be comprehensive. Uh, because because there is no one way in which APIs are implemented. And they there is only like, okay, you add support for Spring, but is Spring the only way people are implementing REST APIs in Java world? There are like dozens of frameworks, and there are dozens of languages like that. What about all those? I mean, the whole purpose of API inventory is actually to be comprehensive. But if your solution is addressing only part of it, at least I'm taking a dig at it because I don't believe in it. But actually, it might be useful. It is necessary maybe in some cases, but it is definitely not sufficient. The second approach is based on the traffic. That's what we do.
Yeah,
Basically, we directly look at the runtime, every active thing. And based on the traffic, we are actually going back and building an inventory of the APIs. The biggest advantages, it's language independent, framework
yeah,
independent, and all of these things. And just selfish plus shameless plug here. We do eBPF takes to the next level. You don't even have to touch your application. You don't have to modify a single line of code. Instantly you will actually start getting it, as opposed to some other forms of data capture and all. But the downside here is, if an API is not active, you would not be able to see. I think
correct.
in the long term, probably we'll marry both of these approaches. Like actually, we have on the roadmap to actually bring in code as well. So
Yeah,
code is useful to actually find the APIs which are never being called.
yeah,
Um, so you want to know the API before it is even called. Definitely, code probably is the best way to go. So
yeah,
we, in the long term, probably vendor will combine all these things. I think we aspire to be the first vendor who is actually doing everything. Um, but these are the common approaches. And when it comes to capturing the traffic, you can capture them at the gateway level, you can capture them in at the WAF level, load balancer level. Like there are several ways. Like when
yeah,
we can discuss a lot. But combining that with the API testing is a
yeah,
different challenge altogether, in my opinion.
yeah,
API testing it has several challenges, but I'll keep it short. There are like four major challenges. You need to
mhm,
know the documentation and you need to know the API first, which is where the inventory comes in. So you need to have accurate inventory for you to do security testing or automate the security testing properly. But then there are three other major aspects for security testing that are needed. One is the authentication automation. Like APIs authenticate in several different ways, and you got to automate all of that for if you want to really automate the security testing at scale.
yeah,
And second one is actually the data, which is one of the hardest things actually. And that's where we really came up with some innovative approaches to get the data to replay and to actually automate it. So we can get into all the nice details. I don't want to digress completely here. Then the final one is basically what Setu's favorite topic might be, which is finding all creative ways in which you are going to attack the API. So basically, you need to know the list and documentation of APIs. You need to automate the authentication. You need to have the API data. And finally, you need to know all the scenarios in which you are attacking APIs. That's why, actually, if any API security vendor is saying they automate a security testing, just ask these four questions. How are they answering all these four? And I can challenge, if they are not addressing this, that solution is incomplete.
yeah,
So the the inventorying, especially the inventory with the API traffic, that can plug in very easily into the API testing, because that actually provides the data. So that's
Yeah,
the secret sauce that we brought in, basically married these two interesting solutions in a way that allows the customers to completely automate the security testing. That's why if you
yeah,
see Levo, we say API observability and security testing product, end to end. So
yeah,
those are all the different four different pillars needed in completely automating the API testing.
yeah, definitely, definitely. And the key part is the API inventory. If there are any shadow assets, or if there are any something like shadow API services that are running in your environment, I think it's the best way is to go ahead and identify them using the ebuff kind of methodologies that you guys are doing, because that's fast. I mean, that's blazing fast, to be honest. And before that, I have used a couple of techniques. Basically, that's like we go ahead and scan a cloud environment and build a simple cloud connector. And in the cloud connector, you have every public service cloud provider has a type of API gateways,
Yeah.
and those API gateways will have the information around what are the APIs that are present in that environment to which it is being connected to behind, and then just go ahead and collect that information using a simple get resource kind of a thing, and get all those things. And now with that, once you have that information, you can use a couple of simple scripts that you can write to go ahead and check how many of those are APIs are behind an authentication, and how many of them are not behind an authentication. So that's a simple way of, I mean, not simple, it's that's a basic way of doing it. And you can use a couple of I mean, these days the modern external attack surface management solutions, they also identify the exposed APIs, and those modern EASM solutions have connections to the cloud environments. And using those cloud environments connectors, we go ahead and collect all those API gateways APIs, and then we get all those configurations. We check how many of them are like public, how many of them are not public, are behind authentication, or if they are exposing any secrets, or are they having any hidden paths. So those type of things are you can do in these type of methods. You can do it basically.
Yeah,
uh,
yeah. I mean, we constantly see people hacking around these kind of solutions, and it's good. It's important problems to solve. But I would like to highlight one thing there. Like all these API gateways typically access logs, or some of these, they only have paths listed there. They don't have
that's
the full details of the request body and all of these things, which I think is a first level information. Knowing those paths is important, but it may not be fully sufficient to actually solve the problem in 100% way. But that's a good start. Like and if somebody, let's say, they don't want to bring in a vendor, or they don't
yeah,
want they don't have the budget or not interest to
yeah,
bring in a third party vendor to do all of this, it's actually a pretty good way to get started. I agree.
yeah, yeah. Because I know these folks are like these are like very good penetration testers, and these folks are do a lot of I mean, Anjali and Divyanshu, all these folks are like very good friends of mine. They help a lot of enterprise customers in solving complex API security, application security problems. And I mean, these are like amazing questions from you guys. So thanks a lot, guys. Keep pushing them out. We're happy to answer all of them as much as possible, at least. Can you? I mean, let's jump on a quick question. By the way, so we have been talking a lot of pure technical terms for the past 30 minutes. So I want to switch gears a bit, and then talk about I mean, tell me, Buchi, really, do you think APIs or API security is important for a lot of compliances that are out there, right? For example, GDPR, CCPA, SOC, PCI. So these are all famous compliance requirements, right? I mean, frameworks. I want to understand, API security, is it really required for all these compliances, or do you think like it's not required? What do you think?
So there are two answers here. What do I think? What is actually really happening? And I'll be very honest. Oh, let's first take a step back, right? What are these compliances and what are they trying to do? Like GDPR, okay, telling like how are you dealing with the end user's data, the PII, and personally identifiable information. Where are you moving it? Who is processing it? Are you sharing it with other third party process data processors? All this information, that why do you, and how is that data getting exchanged? It is getting exchanged through APIs. Eventually, at rest, it might be going into some databases or S3 and all this, but the for the 99% of its life, it is actually getting exchanged through APIs. But I actually don't see, this is a bit disappointing, but I actually don't see a lot of compliances and a lot of people highlighting the need for APIs and mentoring APIs and understanding the API risk as part of these compliances.
Yeah.
And however, I think I'm seeing some good signs. Like, we were just talking to a few prospects recently, and at least in the banking industry, seems like they are just recognizing APIs as assets. It's like, okay, that's huge, and that's a win. And I think that has to happen across all the compliances, because again, like I said, we cannot fight the lost battle. Like, we have to get ahead of the hackers, like you said. I mean, at least go with their pace. I mean, getting ahead is even a dream, in my opinion, because of the state of the art that I am seeing. But like, at least go with their pace. Like, we cannot keep thinking that, oh, APIs are not important. Like, all the data that you are talking about in this compliance is getting transferred through APIs. So tell me how why APIs are not part of your compliance program.
Yeah.
So it is very important, if you ask me, but I'm not seeing everybody seeing it that way. It's starting to change. I'm an optimist at heart. I am definitely optimistic that in few years it will become a big part of all of this. And I think vendors like us will be playing a huge role in that. And I think all these compliance players like Vanta, Drata, Scrat, all these companies have a huge role to play there as well, in my opinion.
Yeah. I think I mean, we use a couple of compliance automation tools. So they already started doing it, by the way, Puchi. They already started saying like, okay, this is an API gateway that you have, and you don't have authentication for it. And this is a load balancer you have, and it's running APIs. It doesn't have encryption or proper certificate on it. So I think they already just started. I mean, it's surprising to me that why these folks are not considering APIs as part of the assets inventory. But
I
I
mean,
mean,
I'm talking about the general majority,
yeah,
right? Like,
yeah,
it's
yeah,
not that.
exactly.
Like, look, I think one thing I learned after entering this industry is,
Mhm.
maybe this is true for every industry also, but it's a huge spectrum. There are
Yeah,
certain, like, we talk to some customers who are actually thinking like way more advanced than what we already have today. But we are also talking to lots of customers who don't see themselves adopting even these kind of tools in the next 3 years also. So it's a
yeah,
huge spectrum. When I say not, like, I'm talking about the majority, but it's a
yeah,
good sign. Like I said, it's a good sign that, like, you are also seeing the change, and we are
yeah.
definitely seeing it with some customers as well.
I mean, when I was just thinking a bit, right? In past, the if you look at like those website domains or web applications are not part of the inventory. Only the servers are part of the inventory.
Yeah.
They went ahead and they just brought those things into the picture.
Yep.
And I think it's a matter of time, Buchi. It's
Yes.
just takes one way or other in the just 1 or 2 years to bring all these things into the scope. And once that comes into the scope, there's a huge requirement, because if the compliance folks tells that APIs should be part of your inventory, automatically all the security controls will be coming in to make sure those APIs are compliant in the first place, right? So it's coming soon is what I feel. At the same time, what I strongly feel is it's very, very important, because there are applications, web applications, totally fine. But at the end of the day, all those applications are communicating using APIs, and the cross applications, cross cloud tenants, all these are behind APIs. When a lot of sensitive information is passing through the APIs, it's basic need that we need to make sure APIs are part of the asset inventory, and we do the basic security things. Nice,
Yep.
excellent, excellent.
No, I
Right.
totally agree. I think it's a matter of time. Like, that's why I said I'm an optimist, and I definitely think it's heading in the right direction. It's a matter of time. And security teams also have hundreds of things to do. Like, it's not that they have a lot of time on hand. So it might take time, but I think it's heading in the right direction.
Yeah, and we have another question from Nikhil, and he says like how API security fits into the broader scope of an organization's overall cybersecurity strategy. You touched base a bit on it, Buchi. Do you want to go ahead and just answer it for you, for him
Right.
quickly?
I think I touched on it a bit. And I just said security teams have a lot to do in their plate. So
Yeah,
this kind of question is kind of linked to it basically. Think
yeah,
security is the defense in depth, right? And
yes,
it's more of a, thinking about the entire organization all the way from endpoints, the developers or engineers or everybody, all the employees, laptops, mobile devices, firewall, network,
yeah,
servers, cloud, data centers. Like, I mean, the list is pretty long. I think where API security fits is if you have to stack rank and, like, if you have to list. I think historically, like few years ago, it was not even in the top 5 or top 10 in my opinion. And that's why, like, we actually have seen, like, in some customers telling that, like, I see, I understand all of this, but it is still in my not top 3 right now. Okay, let's talk. I love what you're saying, I love what I'm seeing here. Let's talk next quarter, let's talk next year. It happened like last year, the year before that, but now it is changing. Now I think actually for majority of the people, I see it in the top 5, at least in some cases even top 3. For those who
yeah,
really understand, like, okay, 83% of the API traffic is APIs, and all the data that we are talking about in compliance is going through APIs. Tell me why it is not in top 5. So obviously there is, a selfish interest also here. I want it to go up and up, but I am seeing in it going up and up. And but you have some basic things like, static code analysis, all the things that can be done very easily with the code, with a simple click. They always come first because the ROI is much higher. And I mean, actually you get started much quickly with it. But also there is a problem of this too many alerts, false positives, and all of this. In spite of that, I still see many people adopting SCA SaaS tools before coming to API security. I'll be honest. It's just
yeah,
easy to get going, right? Even if
yeah,
you don't triage all the alerts that are spit by that. I mean, there is a lot to be done there also. Like, I know a lot of innovation is going on with respect to writing your own rules in SaaS and SCA tools, or in SCA there is again lots of interesting innovation around, like, I mean, even our ABPF sensor actually is looking at your entire application and artifacts and all this. So we could actually tell, apart from just telling, hey, this function, you are using this library which has vulnerability, we could actually tell this library is being actually called versus not. So such innovation is going on. So, but typically, if I see, at least in the application security domain, the SAST and ACA tools come first, and then people are thinking about this runtime aspects of security. But then
yeah.
the inventory is actually moving up and up in the list.
Yeah. I mean, I'll tell my honest feedback on this, Buchi. In a couple of organizations in my previous work experience, I have implemented SAST, I have implemented DAST, RASP, web application firewall, all these things. If you ask me what would I do, I mean, if you ask me like, okay, say, so now I'm joining a new organization and that doesn't have any application security or anything related to API security, nothing. If you're starting from scratch when it comes to product security, I mean, I would first start with a simple WAF that can. There are very good WAFs that right now that can quickly go into like a block mode within a week based on the
Are there
type of.
still companies which don't have a WAF? I thought like everybody has a WAF
There
by
are
now.
there are there are there are there are a lot because with that, I mean, I was thinking the same way, but once I started doing a lot of consulting, right, there are. The second thing which I'll do is I won't do SAST, I won't do DAST, all these things. The thing I'll do is like API security, because once the APIs are secured, automatically the entire stuff is like, if you go ahead and talk about cores and all these kind of headers, those are the actual vulnerabilities. But at the end of the day, what will happen is the data is injected on the API level. So if you have stronger controls on the API security, it's you can prevent a lot of things, a lot of actual things. So because of that, I think like I should I'm strongly feeling that API security should be higher, and it will obviously become higher in the next because it's easier to do. It's once it's easy, people will start doing it. Why SaaS is being highly adopted? Because simply you go and install a solution, connect a GitHub repository, and click on scan. That's it. You get vulnerabilities in it because it's easy to do. But the difficult part is going and fixing it. That's the time consuming. And in API security with the proper solutions, doing traffic monitoring and then finding a catalog inventory and then doing the payloads and finding the actual exploitable vulnerabilities, I think it's a no-brainer not to do or move up the API security a bit.
Yeah.
I have a lot of question, by the way, for you.
One point to just add there, I think I would actually generalize it, whether it is API security or whatever. I think security team should adopt the tools which are really, one, proactively addressing so that you actually control the risk before it even gets into production. Two,
Yeah,
that is continuous.
yeah,
Three, that really matters and that really is true issues, which is where the exploitability and all that we discussed earlier in the call matters. And that's
yeah,
where, like, I think the same thing you are saying. Basically, if SaaS tool is not solving all these things correctly, then it's not checking the boxes. But again,
yeah.
it gives immediate results. So in my opinion, I think it's time you question every tool that you are using to actually provide these things, because those are the right things to do. Those actually give the real security as opposed
Yeah.
to giving a sense of false security. Like, I mean, feeling secure is different from actually being secure.
It is. It is. So, I mean,
Sorry, go ahead, you had a question.
yeah. So with this, right, we have some a new umbrella that came out, right, which is application security posture management, and that umbrella is having static application security testing, dynamic application security testing, software component analysis, infrastructure as a code scanning. So it has all these kind of things. Do you think and do you think like API security also should be part of the wider application security posture management?
I actually I I disagree with the ASPM terminology. I even told this to some of my ASPM company
Yeah,
friends.
yeah, yeah.
At least it confuses me. Because it's a glorified vulnerability management tool.
It is.
There is a need for it. It's an important tool. I'm not saying it is not important, but I'm disagreeing with the term, the way it is called, at least, because
Mhm.
at the end of the day, this tool is not replacing all those tools. It's saying like you have to implement all those tools, and on top of it, we are going to add value. So that way, yes, absolutely. Like, if you think a broader context is needed to actually get into any issue, to solve any actual issue,
Mhm.
then maybe these kind of tools might be helpful. But right now, at least the way I can tell about our tool, the way we are solving it, we are actually trying to solve it fully to the end. We give the complete exploitability, the code to reproduce the exact issue. We can
Mhm.
even give the code that developer can export, a test case that developer can export and put there in their code, so that it's
Wow.
not only it's basically getting tested continuously in future as well. It's not only
Yeah.
about testing it now, but like going forward, it will be automatically tested as well. So
Yes.
I, but having said that, a lot of our customers still ask us, hey, can you do integration with this vulnerability management tool to push vulnerabilities into this tool, because that is our single pane of glass, and I want to see these your findings along with the SAST and the CA tools. Yeah, for sure. I mean, this is, at the end of the day, we have to help the customer to achieve their goals. And if that's how they want to manage these vulnerabilities and alerts, all of them, like, for sure, we want to, I think there is clear separation of responsibilities, in my opinion.
There
One
are.
tool is telling I want to be the best of the breed in actually finding the issue. Other tool is telling like I want to help the customer to achieve a better process, stay on top of the reports, and actually maybe see the broader, like
Yeah.
see everything in one umbrella and all these things. Probably there is place for both. Like, I mean, customers can decide which one they want to adopt
Yeah.
first. But that's how I see it. So I mean,
Correct.
see, even the API security companies, some of them actually name themselves as API security posture management, adding to the confusion. So the posture management is where it's little loosely used, and that's why I said I don't necessarily agree with the ASPM terminology.
Yeah. Makes sense. Makes sense.
Uh,
And
I mean,
this is
hopefully I answered your question. My answer is, short answer is simple. There is clear separation of responsibilities here. I don't think these tools are competing.
yeah.
One is specifically being niche and finding issues, vulnerabilities in one particular category. Other one
Yeah.
is actually bringing everything under one umbrella, and there is place for both, maybe.
Nice. 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 So I mean, I want to have a quick understanding, right? Which is basically the buzzword kind of a thing, which is what are the challenges and benefits of adopting a zero trust architecture for API security?
There's lots of them, lots of challenges, lots of benefits.
Okay.
So yeah, zero trust is definitely a buzzword, and I think that has been applied for several cases, because it's more of a concept, right? It's not specific to APIs or not specific to applications
Yeah.
alone. Fundamentally, you're saying like don't trust, always verify. And when you apply that for, your employees authentication, it means one thing. When you apply that for applications or workloads, it means one thing. When you apply the same for apis, it means one thing.
Yeah.
And what I can tell, obviously the benefits, I mean, it's probably a no brainer, but
Yeah,
your security posture goes to the next level. It improves your maturity and all of these things. In some areas it actually becomes table stakes, maybe, in my opinion, but in some areas it is up in the maturity curve. Like, I'm telling this based on practically what I'm seeing in the field
yeah,
today. If you don't know that, if you don't know what APIs you have,
yeah,
if you don't even know if all of your APIs have authentication or not, zero
yeah,
trust is a luxury, my friend. So what I would say is actually first do the basic things, and then, but if you really want to get up in the maturity curve, and zero trust is the way to go, like start from first applying authentication and stronger authentications, like check what
yeah,
kind of authentication you are using, expire all the tokens, like introduce workload identities, introduce workload authentications.
yeah,
It's a big uphill. It's a maturity curve, um, and it's a much bigger topic for discussion as well. But there are several benefits and challenges as well.
yeah, yeah. I mean, one thing I definitely agree is it's a luxury, Buchi, because it's not easy to do. Going ahead and, for example, even zero trust, it's easy if you go ahead and if you're building a new application, it's a bit easy. You can go ahead and implement authentication, authorization, zero trust level, workload identities. All these things are easy. But if you're going ahead and trying to implement zero trust on an application which is already running in production for a couple of years in past, it's instead of doing a lot of plug and plays and making sure all the services are authenticated and API to API communications are authenticated. So by the time we implement all these kind of controls, it takes too much of resources. Is what I am hearing from the application development teams and other places.
I just want to make sure I don't sound pessimistic or negative about this. I do strongly encourage people to actually adopt it, but also don't underestimate it. Is the point I want to convey. And by the way, I spent a lot of time in this area, and we actually adopt some of these for our own APIs and implementation. Please feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to actually chat more about this topic. Like,
Yeah,
I think there is a lot of tooling that has come in, but in enterprises, right? You cannot throw away what you have and just move to something new just like that, which is why it's basically a multi-quarter or multi-year project. But I think that's something that I see a lot of companies moving towards. Like you said, that's a good way actually. Whenever you are innovating, instead of actually adding that on top of your existing infrastructure or existing way of deploying things, maybe take that as an opportunity to slowly start moving to the new way. Adopting something like service meshes and all of those things are going to make the zero trust journey a lot more easier.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I have this question, by the way, which it's a technical question again. What do you think with a lot of authentication, authorizations, for a lot of API communications happening, do you think that there will be any latency issues? Have you seen? Because I have not implemented zero trust hardcore kind of at a hardcore kind of level, but you are an API sec guy building APIs, securing APIs for most of your career. I want to get it from you. Did you observe any latency issues, or did you see any challenges in implementing these things?
Yeah. I mean, it is. I think you already nailed it. Basically, trying to implement it or force fit it on top of your old deployment architectures is a much bigger task to take up. But the service meshes like and Kubernetes and some of these modern frameworks made it super easy. I
Yeah,
don't like. Yes, there will be a penalty with the performance. For example, take mutual TLS as an example, right? You
yeah,
apply MTLS, obviously you have to decode and encrypt and decrypt every message and at every hop. Yes,
yeah,
it will be, but it's not something that you cannot afford actually. Like if you see Envoy proxy kind of things, like they are super efficient, they are written in native language, they are super efficient. And unless you are doing high frequency trading and like you every microsecond also matters in most of the general workloads, I don't see that as a problem. So if you
yeah,
implement it correctly, if you use the right frameworks, I don't think latency and this is a problem, frankly. But like I said again, it's about the maturity curve, how what kind of
oh,
tooling you have in place and how you are adopting it actually is a big deal.
yeah,
But like I said, I think that in the field I actually see a lot more problem to solve before we make this as a main practice. Those teams which are actually already there, definitely should do it, and
sure.
I'm happy to chat more and give some more pointers offline to those who are interested as well.
Definitely, guys. It's nice. I have I want to just have one last. We have a few more comments, but I will just want to add one last comment to the pool where we can go ahead and discuss it, about it. So it's from Sarvana, and he asks a question saying like, how do organizations have can have balance between the need for API innovation and rapid development and pen testing? So innovation is, I mean, you have mentioned this in the first beginning of our talk, right? The innovation is going fast, and the security is a bit going a bit. The continuous is part is a bit behind. So can you tell me like how can organizations can catch up with this game and do a lot of innovation at the same time catch up with security as well?
Yeah, so I think, see, we have been, for a majority of this talk, we have been talking a lot about the technology. But I also want to highlight the importance of processes and culture in the security teams, and how security and dev side or engineering side are working together. There's like lots of programs, and some people are like, talking about security champions program. I mean, I can even send you some materials on it. Like, a good friend of mine is educating the market a lot on that. Process and the culture also plays a big role here. Not every problem can be solved by technology alone, although technology will play a huge role in that. This
Yeah.
one specifically, the process and culture plays a lot of role. The culture, what do I mean by that? Like, see, I mean, we hear very regularly that, there is friction between developers and security people. Why is there a friction? Like, are you actually working for two different companies? Are you enemies? Not really. I mean, you are both helping the business to succeed. It is just the misalignment on what is the success criteria and what is good and best for the company, and also what do you enjoy. I think that's where, like, more and more engineers come moving to the security side or becoming security champions, and adopting a tooling. Even the security side also adopt tools that give benefits to developers as well, that actually make developers life easy as well. Like, going back to the same tool, right? Like, you get a tool that has 1,000 false positives and you throw 1,000 alerts on a developer, like, they will obviously not have an interest. Being a developer myself, you
Yeah.
tell me about a library that is really insecure, and one library that I need to upgrade, I will jump on it immediately and fix it. You throw me 1,000 issues, just vaguely hand waving and telling, oh, you got to fix all these things. Sorry, I don't have that kind of time. So it's
Yeah.
as simple as that. So the tools and the culture and process plays a big role, and it's high time we need to adopt all these things. I think, yes, the industry is moving in that direction, like, DevSecOps or shift left, all these things. I think some teams have already embraced, but the word security engineering, all these things play a big role in it. Like, there are people who are better experts than me who are speaking on this topic. Please do take a look at that. And that is the way to go to actually improve the agility, while be keeping your application secure.
Got it. I have one last question for you, by the way, which is basically right. Is external attack surface management actually required for application security or not?
That's a no-brainer question. Like, I mean, what do you mean it's not required? Like, it's like, do you need a compound wall for your home, kind of thing? Like, I mean, yeah, you can live without that, but, obviously, yes, you don't have the privacy and you're not secure anymore. So it's a must-have, in my opinion. Actually, I'll be very honest. I was blown away when I got to know that it's a separate segment or separate quadrant than AppSec. I actually see it as integral part of it,
Yeah.
and I think that it's a matter of time. Even this is also a matter of time. Very soon, probably there will be consolidation, and all of this should come under the same umbrella. And security teams, like, if I am the security leader driving this, like, I would actually want all of this under the same umbrella. Like, enough of, like, no, I don't want to look at five different tools for all of this. In my opinion, it's a core part of my AppSec program.
Definitely, definitely. So I think we are on time right now. So I just want to go ahead and quickly thank you, first of all, Puchi, for taking time and helping a lot of folks understanding the challenges in application security, how they can go ahead and implement stronger controls, what are the approaches they can take in terms of strategy, in terms of culture, all these amazing things. And I also want to thank our the folks who have attended this webinar. It's a pleasure. Seeing comments from amazing comments. There are still like 5 or 6 more comments that we did not address, but I'll touch base. I'll get back with the answers for all of you folks. after the webinar and the comment section. Yeah, Buchi, over to you.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, thanks for the invite to this. I really enjoyed chatting with you, and I learned a lot from you because we're both technical, but you actually come from a different background. So I've been learning a lot from you as well, and thanks a lot for all the audience for spending time with us. Hopefully, you learned something from it, and feel free to reach out to either of us if you have any more questions or you want to chat deeply about any topic.
Sure, definitely. Thanks a lot, guys. Take care. Bye bye.
Thank you.